All right, we're back.
Perfect. Here we are. I'm just
Here we are.
recording now. Okay, so thank you very much, James, for your time and for being here. I discovered your Twitter profile some days ago, and I go to your website, and it's amazing what you have been doing all this time. And I like a lot what you focus on. I think you can explain me, of course, so everybody can understand. But you help companies to scale their business, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been an interesting ride. And now it's all through the lens of AI, since everything's through the lens of AI, which has become the past 12 months. Everything's changed so much.
Wow. And I start already with the question. So what for you, because of your experience, what are the main characteristics that a founder need to have to be a good one, like is able to scale a business, not only to validate the idea, also to be able to scale the business? What is the factor that you say, okay, these have this thing in common?
Sure. Unequivocally. And I've worked with a lot of founders. I mentor at Google and Techstars and all these tech accelerators. So I see early stage founders very often. You need a pretty high risk tolerance, right? And you need to be it's very popular term, but very high agency. So there's a level of meaning. What I mean by that is I find there's an inverse relationship with how much advice someone needs versus how much they do. So people that come back to me and ask me 50 questions in a row are the least likely to actually go do those things. Right? Someone says to me, hey, how do I do this? I can send them on a mission and they go do it. But someone that sort of asks, how do I do this? But what happens if I do that? And what it doesn't work, do I do this? They're actually, even though they seem like they're being curious about the solution, they're really the type of person that means they need someone to tell them what to do. And what I've found is very interesting about humans is humans really want the sense of freedom, but they don't really want they want people to tell them what to do, right? When it comes to work, everyone thinks they want to be in charge of themselves. They do not. They want someone to hand them the path. And so when it comes to founders, you need a very high agency, so very likely to go figure it out on your own, and a high risk tolerance, which becomes, I'm 37, becomes the harder the older you get because you have so much more to lose at 37 than you do at 19. So this is often why you see these 19-year-olds raise all this money, is because they believe these impossible things are possible. And you need to sort of believe, this is the kind of corny, cheesy part of it, but it's true. You have to genuinely believe that what you're trying to do is possible, because if you don't believe it's possible, you will never take the risks to try and do it. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a sum up on it.
Totally agree. Correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe it's disconnected. In your bio in Twitter, you mentioned 2 exit and 1,000 fails, right?
Yeah,
so you have
taken
a lot of actions, and probably a lot of things, of course, don't work because nobody teaches, and we need to guess what is working, what can perform well, and what not. What do you think? Scale used to be very difficult because nobody teaches how to scale, because, okay, the idea maybe is 5%. Later, the execution can be 30, 40%. But later, I think it's even more difficult. It's not the same to sell to 10 people that to sell to 1 million people or 50,000 people. So what do you think used to be the most difficult thing that's happened to scale? Is difficult because of the team, or people don't know how to delegate, or they don't know how to automatize? I suppose it depends on the business, of course. But what is for your experience, more difficult for people to scale? Why is it difficult for people?
Well, because the skill, and you touched on it perfectly, it's that the skill set to go from 0 to 1 is very different from the skill set to go to 1 to 2. And that's something I personally struggle with a lot in my life. And I've learned, I'm not great at it yet, but I'm trying every day to be better at the 1 to 2. Now, what I mean by that is to go from 0 to 1 requires very high agency, very high risk tolerance, very high curiosity, like I said. You have to go become a generalist. You have to become very good at many things, but not an expert at any one thing normally, right? And so you get a lot done yourself. Now, through that process, you end up building something $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million a year by getting a lot done yourself. Now, ironically, to go to that next point about delegating, to get to that next level requires letting go of some of those processes and to hand them off to someone else. So you have to be, it's very rare that you find founders who are very good at the sense, you need utter control early on, but then you have to learn how to fully let go of that control later on. And those are two conflicting mindsets. Those are two very different personality types. It's very rare that you find a founder. That's why I think you find often people are great freelancers, or they're great at working for themselves, but they aren't very good at letting go and growing past that thing to where the entity becomes separate of them. That's very, very, very difficult. And so, what's interesting is I do think we happen to some of the unlock that's happened in the last 12 months with LLMs and AI is that like a singular founder can do more on their own, or a small team can do more on their own without having to delegate as much or let go of as much, because they're actually being able to execute more on their own. But the truth is that what I mean by that is that a single person or a small team can just execute more, but they still are not getting good at sort of the delegation and letting go of things. It's just that they can execute more because we are so enabled by AI. But unequivocally, the biggest problem with growing a business is the founder. The bottleneck is the founder every time, at going from like 5 or 10 million to above that, because it just is a very different skill set. The people I know that are very good at, and I was just on a phone call with someone running a $60 million book of business, and they are probably very bad at the minutia, right? They are very good at is managing and hiring and seeing the forest from above the trees, right? And so it's just two completely different skill sets. And I've never been in the $1 billion founder skill set, so I don't know what that's like to run a $1 billion company. But I can tell you the difference between making 300 grand a year and making $10 million a year is astronomical. I can only imagine that it's the difference between 10 million and 500 million is, again, a totally different skill set. And that's why you find that the Mark Zuckerberg, the Bill Gates, the people that take things from 0 to $1 trillion are 1 in 1 trillion people, right? It's not just because they're so smart and so amazing and they're visionaries. It's because they've managed, in my mind, to go from being a builder to a manager to a overseer, right? And they are just not only just different skill sets, but completely different personality types at their core as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for sharing. I think like social media and newspaper make us believe that to be like a unicorn is not very difficult. And it's very difficult. I mean, because exactly, it look like, I mean, and for me, like if we are done, like our chief, like to, to create a unicorn, we are silly or, oh, what I'm doing bad, because you need to have, I don't know, but imagine like 100 things that we need to do well in all the process to be able to have that. Because for example, now with AI, you mentioned we are able to execute more things, but we are learning like by doing at that time, because never before we have been able to do it. But one thing, and this is like one question I make to you now, the other day I read something very interesting. I think was from Peter Levels, the guy from Nomadly.
Yeah.
He was saying something like, very important, you want to have a very like a unicorn, that you need to like build a great team. But to be able to have a great team, you need to pay to have a lot of like offer them a lot of salary, because the good one, if not, they're gonna create their own things. And if you need to, you want to pay someone a lot of salary, you need to have already a lot of money, like raise or money in your own. So one thing is to have like $1 million startup or 5 million, which is amazing. A lot of people would find that to have it. Another one, I think, is to have a unicorn, right? Yeah. So how do you think everybody? I mean, I am guessing the answer, but do you think everybody can learn and create a unicorn startup?
I mean, my thought is no on the unicorn. I do think that anyone can go make a few $100,000. You know what I mean? Like I think that people conflate the difference between running a company and being a freelancer, basically, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a freelancer. Like I mean that immense. Like you can be a solopreneur with some contractors you work with. I know a lot of people that say they own agencies, right? And what they mean is that they are a solopreneur, that works with a couple contractors to outsource labor. And that's awesome. And it is an agency, but it's very different than running like a Wyatt Kennedy or a BBDO or a TBD, a $5 billion agency holdings company. So my thought is $1 billion. I mean, I don't know. I've never started $1 billion company, but I've definitely started some 8-figure companies. And like, I don't think anyone could run $1 billion company. I don't. I think maybe as output changes from AI, but not anyone. Again, here's the other thing that Peter Levels is missing about that, which is that not everyone wants to make money. Not everyone actually wants the responsibility. This goes back to what I said. Everyone thinks they want to go build something on their own. Many people do not, right? And I think that many people that go off and do things on their own end up finding out that they would much rather be inside a team where I think that many people would be better intrapreneurs than entrepreneurs. Right? Like building something inside organizations that already exist, where there's financial backing and there's security and there's a team around you and structure. But it's very different than wanting to look at a blank piece of paper and say, we're going to turn this blank piece of paper into a massive building one day, right? And I think that, so with that said, you know, when he talks about comp, this is something I've realized is very interesting, that this is another super complex skill set to have, which is that the best founders, you're right, you need a lot of money, or you need to be the best recruiter on the planet, right? So how do I convince you that what you're going to come and work on today is the most exciting and biggest thing that you can work on, even though I can't pay you the equivalent, right? It happens. It happens every day in Silicon Valley, and that's what he's not recognizing. There are pre-seed startups that go and hire the top talent. That's how they become multi-billion-dollar companies, is because they have the top talent, right? And so, but they've just gone and recruited really well. They've convinced people that what they're doing is worth them leaving that $1 million a year opportunity to come on board and work with them today. And so that is poaching at its core. And this is what I learned last year through a startup I was trying to do. One of my 1,000 failures was that, like, hiring through a job board is only going to bring two people. You're either going to bring people that don't have jobs, or you're going to bring people that hate their jobs so much they want to leave. Neither of those are the talent that I'm desperately trying to attract. So when you go and hire the best talent, you are poaching them out of jobs they like. And you are a salesman convincing them that your ship is worth leaving their ship to come on board, right? You can think of it as like sort of any exploration. We could think about settlers coming to the United States from Europe, right? Like, you are taking the top talent on the planet and convincing them to hop on a 90-day journey, 120-day journey where they may die because there is something better there. And it's not, by the way, that you just got the crappiest people to come to America. You got some of the most excited and interesting and high agency people to come and build this country. And that was by the promise of an even more exciting and better dream. So you as a founder, if you don't have $1 million, yeah, some talent's not going to come work with you, but you just have to become that amazing salesperson, right? You're selling this vision, this dream, and recruiting the talent to come aboard with you. You know, I'll read you really quickly a call before this. And it's Shackleton, you know, Ernest Shackleton's posts for going on, I think it was exploring, I think he did Antarctica. Maybe I'm totally wrong with that. But the job posting he wrote was, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, return doubtful, honor and recognition in inventive success. And he still brought people along that journey. And so you need to, if you're very early stage, be able to convince people that that journey is worthwhile instead of them taking $1 million a year at Meta. So anyway, that's a long rant, but I do feel that way.
It's very interesting, yeah. And also, I think, like, if you don't have so you don't build a great team, or you don't raise money. I always said that to raise money shouldn't be the goal, should be like a tool to get the goal. But the problem is, you are doing something well with your project, and someone sees it and it's better than you, have more money than you. Of course, you're gonna.
I lost you for a second.
Scale faster than you. Talking about the experience that you have, I mean, all the job you have been helping companies. You mentioned in your website that you have helped some companies like to multiply the revenue for 5 or even like 8, you know, in 6 months. What is the secret to do that? Why something like explode so fast?
Yeah, so I mean, I know exactly. That's actually a company I bought. So I bought a hearing aid company in 2021, and we grew it like 8x in less than 10 months and sold it in less than a year. And actually that was just price elasticity. So what I mean by that is that I think that the quickest lever you can pull is changing your pricing, right? And that it is, and when people, when they think about changing pricing, they think that it just makes a difference for that bottom line, right? So let's say you sell a $500 product and you raise the price to $1,000. You think in your mind, okay, great, I make an extra $500. Of course you do on every product you sell. That's amazing. But you have to start thinking about second and third order effects. So if I sell a $500 product, I raise it to $1,000. When I'm making $500 more, it's what can I do with that extra money? Can I dump that extra money back into growth? And that becomes compounding, right? So now it's just like snowball, right? So what I would say is that because that can't work with any business, but like the quickest thing you can do in any business is think about your pricing. And what you'll find is that people think that that there's a linear relationship between price increase and conversion rate drop. And that's just not true. So people think that if they raise their price 2x, their conversion rate will drop 50%. It's not true at all. So it will drop, but it's not the same amount. So if you raise your price 2x and the conversion rate drops 25%, you're actually making way more money, right? But let's just say even in the scenario that you raise your price 2x and conversion rate drops 50%. So your top line stays the same. Well, on the surface, that seems not amazing. But here's the reality, is that means that your fulfillment has been cut in half. So your bottom line will actually increase. So even though the top line stays the same because you're twice the price with half the conversion rate, you're actually making more money at the bottom because you have less customers to service for the same amount of money, right? So my point is to say, like, it doesn't work for everything, but like gut check, gun to the head. If you are already making money, if you ask me what is the likeliest way to be able to scale, it would be, it sounds cheesy, it's very Alex Hormozi, but it is to raise prices. And it's because the second and third order effects that come from having more profit. So even with the same top line revenue, the more profit would mean that you've got more money to throw back into growth, which should then make this circle and this flywheel go round and round. So, I mean, obviously we did a lot more than that, but at its core was we changed the pricing of the product that we bought.
It's very interesting. And also you forgot to mention that the clients are much better when they pay more. They used to complain less.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The more money, yeah.
It's very
I
important.
mean, it all fits in, right? So you have better clients, you have less fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, I was talking to someone about this earlier. If, let's say you want to do $20 million a year. I'm just making this up. Yeah. Even at $50,000 a year ACV, so $4,000 to $5,000 a month for services, a lot of people feel like that's a lot. At $20 million a year, let's assume it's like a one-off thing as opposed to recurring. You know, at $50,000, you're looking at 20 times 400 clients you have to close, right? You're talking about a knife fight, right? So anyone who's charging, for example, $2,000 or $3,000 a month, you either have to be in a very, very, very large product-led growth business in which you are not actually closing clients on phone calls at scale, or you're just going to accept the fact that you make $1 million a year when you're capped out. And that's great. That's great. And I think a big thesis of my life is to let people know that $1 million a year is fucking awesome. Excuse my language, right? And like taking home 400 grand is amazing. And that very often what people don't realize is getting to 10 or 20 million. I know people that make more or similar amounts of money at $5 million a year top line than my friends that are making $30 million a year top line, because what you have to do to get that business going, keep that business going, is so much more. So you might do $5 million a year top line and take home $1 million on that personally. Amazing. And you can have a business that's like 8 people. You love running it. You know, to be the $30 million top line, you know what I mean? Like you have a 200 person business, right? And you're like, and you're still only taking home that $1 million a year because the other $1.5 million you have to keep inside the business to make sure that it can support everyone's salaries in case everything goes wrong for a month or two. So, you know, the idea of having to have a big business as being the best way to live a quality life, I fundamentally disagree with for most people.
Yeah. And how the last 12 months, how AI have changed the way that business scale? Like how you do it, like, for example, how you get different like client or people to work with, or a business that you have been working. Like, because sometimes, I mean, AI is amazing, you know, it helps from like ticket support until I get new leads, Setters AI, which is amazing. It's huge, but I mean, all the companies I think are trying different tools, you know, because each week there is something new. How AI have helped companies, and do you think it's now like easier because the cons like also competitors have access to them? I mean, and
Sure.
People have limited money, you know, it's not everybody have like money and can pay you now. So also you need to do it well. How's your experience with AI and how that can help companies to do it well?
So, I mean, in a couple of different ways. I think inevitably, this is the really sad and scary part about fundamental change like this, is a lot of people will lose their jobs, and a lot of people will not be able to adapt to the change. In the long run, I do think this is better for society. It's sort of like talking about factories, right? Like we went from everything being handmade goods to factory produced. And through that process, lots of horrific things happen to people. It's terrible, right? Now, in the long run, I think it's probably better for society that everything doesn't have to be handmade, right? That we can be able, I mean, agriculture changed, right? Like, you know, GMOs may allow us to grow, like we wouldn't be able to support the amount of population size we have without sort of like GMOs inside certain foods, right? But through that process, terrible stuff happens. Point is to say, with AI in companies, I'm seeing there are going to be people that don't recognize the AI. They're going to be Luddites. They're going to be slow adopters. And there are going to be people that cannot charge what they used to charge. But there's a company I'm working with now who, like, I was building out a bunch of stuff for them using AI to help me. I would have had to hire, you know, I sent out a pitch for someone the other day for something that's like $10,000 a month, for something that I would have had to charge like $18,000 a month for before. because I would have had to hire other people to do a lot of the internal stuff,
Makes
right?
sense.
And so now I can, for them, charge them less money. I can take on 90% of the work myself because it's enabled by AI. And so they're going to get better costs into their business. I'm going to make more money or the same amount of money for less amounts of work, right? And like, yes, someone in that value chain got left behind, right? Someone, the people that would have been hired from me got left behind. But this just means that there has to be a fundamental shift in the way that people think about how they acquire clients or how many clients they can serve, right? I think that's the big shift people need to think about. It's like, well, whoa, my clients will only pay me $500 a pop now instead of 5,000. Okay, well, now you can serve 10 clients, right? In a way that you couldn't before. And I think that's going to be tough for some people, and that's unfair that happens that way. But for many people, that's how they'll have to adapt to it.
Wow, very interesting. Last but not least, because your time is very important, you start now, James, a business. What kind of business would be? I mean, like, which sector do you think is like very interesting? Not only like people are like paying more online or like investors are investing more. How do you think like 26, 27 next year is gonna be?
I mean, for us, the big bet is actually sort of like basically we're going into orgs and then teaching them how to adopt AI inside their companies, because I think a lot of people think it's like, oh, I use ChatGPT, and you and I hang out in this corner of the internet that's very tech savvy, but like a lot of the world is not. But everyone's thinking AI implementation. I can tell you there's a big difference between, a little, like teaching someone ChatGPT and then actually like getting adoption inside a 500-person organization and like how you actually get them to use it and like what they actually need it for and the certain work streams. I spent a lot of my life in the blogging world. I think blogging is very dying, right? Like it's a huge shift. I think that people will continue to consume media, but through totally different forms, right? That's the one I think is for sure dying. I think physical services, like home services, are going to crush and continue to do well. People will need homes. People will need plumbing. People will need, and all of that, you can use AI to make it better and more efficient. I mean, like in terms of like the back office stuff of it. Marketing is a very interesting one. I don't think AI is great at marketing yet. I think it enables people like me who are good marketers to service more clients. Yeah. I would say that the fundamental, where I would be very careful with, is like the fundamental model of agency services, I think, is going to have a reckoning, right? Like, and I don't know how it's going to shake out. There will be agencies always, but like the structure in which value is delivered, I think, is going to change a little bit, right? Like, people are going to go from saying like, oh, I charge $20,000 a month for media buying to like, how does that work? You know what I mean? Like, and so like, that's something I'd be careful about. I would say right now, I'm really interested in just becoming as much on the cutting edge of everything as possible, because everything changes every 3 months now, and it didn't before. And so as long as you're on the edge of it, you'll see the opportunities. And I would say that you need to hang out in our little corner of the internet where we're on the edge of technology. And then you spend half your time there and then half your time hanging out in the real world where people are not recognizing how these technologies are used, and you'll see the opportunities of how to apply them. And then if I had the right answer now, I would do it full time myself. But I don't. And so that's where, for us, it's like we're working with these mid-market firms that are trying to adopt technology, right? And I think everyone thinks you need to like build out software for them. And yeah, we build some software, but it's much more like, how do you look at like change management and how do we help firms actually adopt the software? Because the software that I build is not better than Anthropic software. I can tell you that much. I haven't raised $100 billion, right? Yeah. It's much more like, how do I get the off-the-shelf tools to work really well for you inside your org in a way that actually is efficacious, as opposed to how do I go build you new tools? And I think there's a huge AI implementation market. Everyone's out there being like, oh, we're going to go build you tools. But like, no, the best CRM is probably the one that costs you $100 a month and someone put $100 million into, probably not the one you vibe coded on Lovable, right? And I think that's a big thing where my view is.
The other day I was reading something like that. It's incredible that there is like companies like, I don't know, remember it was like DocuSign or something like that have 6,000 employees. Yeah. I would say like, what? Like, how is that possible? I mean, I suppose there is something legal behind or a lot of salespeople.
Sales, I think sales is a big piece of it. I do think sales is a huge piece
exactly, of it. For big companies. I suppose it's like that because I cannot believe there is 1,000 people coding that.
Yeah, no way.
And I was asking to, like Grok in Twitter, how long would it take to create a Lovable, something similar to DocuSign? And they say like 1 afternoon, you want to do a professional maximum 1 week. So yeah, each time there are more people like more talent because of the rise of the, the cost of living in US and other places, going to Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia. Have you been there before?
I used to live in Kuala Lumpur, so I know that part of the world very, very well. And I can tell you that even from I haven't lived there in 10 years, but at the time, the adoption of technology was, although parts of it seem very tech savvy, like you can use a Huawei phone in Southeast Asia, but I can't in America, for example, right? They don't sell them here. And like, obviously some Android stuff is better in that regard, is that like, when I was living there, like Facebook was like the top search engine. People like using Facebook for search all the time, right? Like as opposed to Google, right? And so it's like, there's also a lot of people don't recognize that like that little region, right? Like the amount of people that speak Bahasa, for example, right? Like is massive. I promise you, ask an American if they know what Bahasa is. They literally have no idea, right? Like, terima kasih is like not a,
And it's not very difficult, eh? That's the interesting part. Bahasa Indonesia is not difficult at all. But
it's like a much more simple language than, yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of simple. You need like to prioritize, need to be your priority and have the time, to learn it. But it's not difficult at all, for people. But yeah, it's like everybody has 24 hours and everyone decide who like, what you prioritize in life. When is next time, James, you're going to come to Indonesia? And
you let me know when. I would love to. I miss Southeast Asia so much. I haven't been to Indonesia in a long time. You let me know when. I'll be there.
Perfect. That would be amazing to have you in Ecovit City. And how people, James, can find you online?
They can find me on Twitter or X. I'm Jameson Camp or James on Camp. And then my website is james.camp. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I talk about growing businesses, mostly with AI all the time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, James, for your time and for sharing all of this with you. I hope you can visit us very soon there and you can share like knowledge with everybody. We have a lot of people like building like interesting things and every month more and more. Yeah, thank you very much for everything.
Of course, man. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you.